making sense of the madness. We got a great show lined up for you today. We got Christian Briggs, the CEO of Hard Asset Management, Inc. We're going to be talking Kamala Harris, 2024, cryptocurrency, and beyond. You're not going to want to miss it. Buckle up and get ready to make sense of the madness. Back. We are joined by Christian Briggs. Christian, before we get into the news of the day, let my audience know about yourself and how you got into the political/economic arena.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on your show. One of the biggest things that I did was I looked at basically the political arena is not doing what it needs to be done on the Republican side. There wasn't donors, there weren't active people that were trying to counterbalance all of the Democrat and the way they were raising money, their messaging. And so I took an active role and decided that I was going to be a part of the solution rather than just be a standby participant.
So when we look at this election cycle, obviously it is the most bizarre election cycle in my lifetime, after the most bizarre election cycle of my lifetime in 2020, but it has gone even farther with the Democratic Party basically circumventing any part of the democratic process. Now, I've argued that you could point to 2016 and clearly the party of democracy didn't care that Bernie Sanders was the person that the people wanted, gave it to Hillary Clinton. In 2020, Joe Biden was not cleaning up in the debates nor the primaries. And you had strategic dropouts in order to get him in there, and they put in a dementia patient. Then his vice president is somebody who couldn't get 3% in the polls and was one of the first to drop out. This time around, they stopped a viable candidate from even being in the process of running. They waited until after the primary season for Biden to drop out, and then just gave the nomination to somebody who is clearly not qualified. So what are your thoughts?
Well, they had no choice, right? So you had three states, that the primary states, that they could not have allowed another candidate or another person that could have been put onto the ballot. Kamala Harris was the only choice. So the decision was made at the very top. I think when Obama realized that the three states, even though they were more pro-Democrat, the Republicans would have had a huge lawsuit that would have been filed that would have more than likely won at the end of the day in Supreme Court. Whether they determined that decision before the election or did after, there was a heartfelt understanding that can Kamala actually do this, but more importantly, would she be able to actually be the person that could retain by legal standards, go through the Supreme Court's test on the validity of the candidate?
Well, I mean, what is the validity of a candidate that can't get a single vote? You know what I mean? Or won't do a single interview that's live, or take questions, or have a town hall with actual citizens. I mean, this person is appearing to be the most outwardly puppeted Democratic nominee beyond Biden. At least Biden had dementia. This woman has her faculties about her. This woman, should be out on the campaign trail, is not on the campaign trail. That CNN interview, pre-record, released in 3 parts, etc. And it seems to me like this is a new era of politics where you don't have to engage with the public and you're just expected to buy into the great narrative that is perpetrated by the mainstream media and politics.
Okay, so that's great points. Let's look at the bigger picture here. What you have is ideology, you have an agenda. We're starting to go less and less to the candidate, but the Democrats are now framing an idea, a way of life. So look at the policies. Let's talk about that. Why is Kamala gotten so popular? Even today, I just read Fox News poll has her at 3 points ahead. The gaming sites have her down about a half a point up to 1 point. So that's a little bit more of a variable. But I do believe that she's ahead, and I'll tell you why. Statistically, what we've learned in my family office, we've got statisticians and we've got some actuators that literally look at all of the basis for the reasoning why we come up with conclusions. So here we go, stats. 62% of America doesn't pay taxes, which means they live on something of a federal, state, or local handout, whether it's in part or in whole. They're getting something to live on that doesn't require a reproduction, as I call it, reproducing revenue back into the economy. They're taking but not giving. So take 62% of America, zero tax liability. Second thing, 80% of America lives paycheck to paycheck. Now, what does that mean? That means the average income is about $76,000 a year for that middle class, upper middle class, which is really the bigger part of the 80%, because if you minus the 62, we're left with about 18%, give or take. So those people are now going to be more shifting toward policy of wallet. And here's what I mean about that. If you're making 76,000 a year, family of four, okay, mom, dad, two kids, sometimes three kids, you're living on basically 5, 6, even 7,000 a month. Let's give it that. Your average healthcare costs alone are between $800 and $1,000 a month. Now, if I was Kamala Harris, I would push free healthcare. She does. Free childcare. She does. Free college and university tuition. She does. If you take any one of those three, those have an impact that's directly affectable on people of that 80%. Anywhere from an $800 to a $1,200 to could be a $5,000 monthly, quarterly, or yearly cut in your overall overhead of your whatever it is that your family. If it's healthcare, it's $1,000 a month. So if I go to you and I say, listen, I'm going to give you $1,000 a month raise, you're going to have to vote for me and stay with me on this policy. The Americans right now are more inclined to accept that part of the agenda than the other ideology parts, because what's the first rule? People vote with their pocketbook. So if I'm adding 1,000 a month or 5,000 a quarter or 5,000 a year, the people that need it the most are now actually looking at this as a consideration for the first time, not generational, not kids, grandkids looking down the road of what will the policies do to affect them. They're looking at the immediate opportunity, the drive-through versus the long term. How will this affect me today? That type of policy is resonating with the vast majority of America. Doesn't mean they're all going to vote her way, but what it means is for the first time, she's getting the majority of Americans in that demographic to look at her, not her personally, but look at her policies. That's the frightening thing. We've become a society of instant gratification, not long-term understanding.
Well, you mentioned 60+% on some kind of government dole. I always say it's 40 plus, but you would know better than me. That has always been an alarming number because, again, you have this system where people are expectant on the government to essentially take care of them in large regard. Now, when you talk about the free healthcare aspect, I often look at Trump for people that do pay taxes, right? There was more money in my paycheck a couple weeks after he got back, or he got in 2016. Now that tax cut was for 10 years. It's about to run out. He said that he will extend it. Mum's the word from the Democratic Party. But he got a lot of traction with the no tax on tips, and rightfully so. I mean, we have large areas of service economy in this country. I come from the pizza making slash bartending game. Tips are everything. If you are a single mother, you can actually make a living working at a restaurant, making those tips. Casinos have exploded throughout the country. The deregulation on that. There's another service economy where people can make a living. And unsurprisingly, the Democratic Party, aka Kamala Harris, jumped on this, and now it's no tax on tips on the other side. I was looking at a political cartoon the other day, and it had Trump in a restaurant, and in that restaurant, he was saying, no tax on tips to this waitress who was a black woman, and she's looking at him, she's happy, and then Kamala Harris is in the window saying no tax on tips, and she looks at her funny, and then she comes in and she goes, "You realize you're the vice president, right? You can make no tax on tips right now." And essentially, you would think that you'd want to pull a move like that if you were being genuine on the campaign trail. That would just boost people to vote for you. Like, hey, this policy is going to stay in place. I suspect that if Harris gets in, they'll still tax tips. They'll just tax it at a lower rate at some kind of Johnny nonsense compromise. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I can't agree more. Okay, so those are really good points, and we can take it from there. So let me tell you where the 62% come from, and this is real important. When Trump took office, there was a 52% non-tax participation in the United States. It wasn't, and it didn't go across just one or two demographics or races. It was completely across the board, almost equal in a lot of areas. Okay, so for the tax for tips, let's talk about that. The whole service industry, like you said, has exploded, and not just in areas of hospitality, but in other areas of service. And that service has expanded because you've got a lot of new companies from social media that's providing services. But the question that you have to ask yourself is, Kamala Harris, is she a person to initiate some of that understanding, or Trump? Look at the way they're gravitating toward a lot of the policies of Trump. They're trying to go after the core, the demographics that are going to be, in my opinion, are going to be the essential deciders of this election. 18 to 42-year-old women right now are some of the fastest registered demographics in the history of any election. Certainly now this one, abortion and other things. Service and all of the things of which that are surround one of the largest ecosystems in the last 10 years that's been created. Manufacturing has gone down. Technology as well as trade schools down. The things that have grown the most is service, and they both know that. That's why Trump came out and said, I will have no tax on the tips. Remember when they did the inflation in reduction bill? Inside that was that big IRS thing where for the first time they taxed the tips. She was the deciding vote. So when she says no tax on tips, she's lying. She had a chance 2, 3 years ago to determine that there should be no tips. She was the deciding vote on what made the IRS expand from the number of agents, 87,000, to where the new taxes are going to come from. And one of the biggest gross mistakes, I believe, of any politician is to tax the service industry, especially the hospitality or the servers, because tips is how they make most of their money.
Well, not only that, but let's be honest, we've already paid taxes on those tips. And when we're talking about tips, it's a gift. It's on top of the bill you're already
Mm-hmm.
paying that is going to be taxed. So it's kind of ludicrous anyway. That's why cash is king in those industries. Let's be honest, nobody really claims all of their tips, nor should they. But you made another point. You talked about the Inflation Reduction Act. And originally, it was under the moniker, quote unquote, Build Back Better. Now, Kamala Harris,
Mm-hmm.
being the psychopathic serial liar that she is, actually said that Build Back Better was her and Joe's idea. Joe doesn't have any ideas. Joe didn't run anything. Kamala Harris doesn't run anything. Everybody heard the Build Back Better talking point, not only in this country, but around the globe. If you really wanted to pin it down to somebody who used it first, it would be Andrew Cuomo, another psychopath, in April of 2020 when he was giving his daily briefings and literally had a Build Back Better presentation in the background and started talking about how pre 9/11 you wouldn't have taken off your shoes at an airport, but here we are and things are changing. Now, with that being said, the Build Back Better plan didn't work. Too many people had heard it, didn't like it, knew what it was about. They didn't change the bill; they changed the name to the infrastructure bill. They built no infrastructure
Mm-hmm.
with it, and it set the precedent that this quote unquote green agenda will continue forward unless you get another administration in there that is going to radically change what we already have. So, in reality, what is the infrastructure bill and how do you dismantle it?
Okay, you got me going here on a great topic. The infrastructure bill and the Inflation Reduction Act were two Trojan horses. They were never about what they would otherwise capture the meaning of with their names. Infrastructure, no. Inflation reduction, no. That was a lie. Here's what they were for. And I invite anybody to read the bills as they stand and signed into law. The majority of the money was used to fund a number of things. One, climate change, to be able to pay back the big donors by funding these companies that supposedly are in the climate change reduction, okay, climate change initiative. there were billions, and I mean hundreds of billions of dollars that was set aside for companies that said we're going to do what we need to do to reduce climate change. Most of those companies are owned by the big donors of the Democrats. It was a way to get paid back. Second thing, there was two things that were very clear in the climate change initiative portions, not just to the companies, but to an initiative. And in both of those, there was 50 billion in each package, okay, each piece of legislation that was used for one primary purpose. It went to some dark organizations, far up, and I'm talking full Marxist communist organizations designed to sign up voters in low income or impoverished places. And as they were titled, okay, this is like the Trojan horse, and as some people know about this, certainly in the Senate they do, and they've been trying to stop it, was the simple statement: this money will help the impacted individuals or families hit hardest by climate change, your low income impoverished people. They were using the money to come in there and say, well, we're going to do something, we're going to build infrastructure. That's not true. Every penny was paid to pay the individuals tens of thousands of dollars a month and yearly for a number of different years. This wasn't just like a one-time thing. The sick thing about this was it was another entitlement program to keep people dependent on the Democrats. And what they said was, you vote this way, we'll register if you're not, and if you are, you vote this way, and we'll continue to pay you monthly allowances. Here's some up front, pay you monthly allowances for years to come. Just like yesterday on Labor Day, a young lady posted a video of showing where you can receive a government check in New York for $15,000 or up to for an individual, and even more for a family, plus $5,000 a month. These are monthly fees, by the way. The 15 was for food and shelter, an additional 5,000 a month for ancillary services or just products, anything you want. 20,000 a month. But you have to vote Democrat. And this is in New York City. And they've signed up 3 or 4 million people on this. So when they say we are the party of the middle class, they're the party of the entire class of people to pay them to vote. They don't make boundaries on that. So the infrastructure bill and the Inflation Reduction Act were nothing more than a political ploy to pay donors back, to sign up people for Democrats, and to pay them for years to come to keep the loyalty program going far beyond what would have otherwise been welfare or Medicare or food stamps.
We got to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk about actual inflation, where it is, where it's going, and whether or not we're going to see anything different if we do get another administration in there. It's Making Sense of the Madness, and we'll be back after this.
The world is about to shift. Banks are going cashless globally with the emergence of central bank digital currency, which will bring with it programmable money and the ability to turn on or off your purchasing power based on your digital social profile. It's like the equivalent of spyware in your bank account. You need to get out of the system with the world's safest and most precious assets, silver and gold. Call Kirk Elliott Precious Metals at 720-605-3900. That's 720-605-3900.
Did you know that thousands of authors across the country have written books and published them with Page Publishing? If you've written a book, Page Publishing can help you through the process. We cut through the confusion of the publishing world to make it easy for you. If we decide to publish your book, your work ends and ours begins. From copy editing and proofing to typesetting and book cover art, we get you printed, distributed, and sold on Amazon, Apple iTunes, and in bookstores across the country. We'll even help you promote your book. That's right, we do all this for you. Biography, self-help, mystery, novels, sci-fi, even a children's book. No matter what genre, Page Publishing can bring your book to life. Call today for your free author submission kit and find out how you can be the next published author at Page Publishing.
Call for your free author submission kit at 855-993-2114. That's 855-993-2114.
We are back. And Christian, we talk about actual inflation. I'm feeling it every day. I know a lot of people out there that actually do pay their bills and are a part of that working poor, that paycheck to paycheck, or even have a little bit. You're feeling it when you used to pay $2 for 4 sticks of butter. Now it's $4+ for 4 sticks of butter. You used to pay $2.50 for gasoline. Now you're paying $4 to $8 for gasoline, depending on where you're at. Your heating costs have gone up. Even bottles of water.
Yeah.
I used to be able to get a gallon of the purified water, 89 cents, sometimes even lower, $1.26. I mean, it's literally everywhere. I can't name a product that has stayed about the same or gone down in the last 3 or 4 years. Now, a lot of that is due to the fact that you had this COVID-19 84 nightmare. Trump went along with Operation Warp Speed, and they just started printing money like you've never seen before. I don't think that has been regulated. I think on top of that, you're giving more money away than ever in these programs with NGOs to bring illegals into the country. You've got some people saying 8 million, some people saying 15 million, some people saying up to 30 million. I've been in the airports. I've seen it as it happened. They get their little packet, they get flown somewhere, they get a little card, it's got cashy cash on it. They're paying for hotels for these people. And then when they do get settled into work, they actually do take American jobs. You could look at Tyson Food Factories as one of the most egregious examples of this, shutting down plants in the state of Iowa, where I now live, and then where I used to live in upstate New York, allowing migrants to come in, take those jobs at $16.25 an hour. You can't live in upstate New York for $16.25 an hour, folks. On top of that, there's no benefits anymore. And the only benefit that you have as a migrant is we're going to hire lawyers to make sure you get to stay in the country. This is open and arrogant treason. And to me, it is, one of the fluctuation points of why I don't think inflation can come under control unless we regulate all of these things. Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong. And let me even bring it to another head. So what they're doing is they're busing people and flying people in open borders. I went to the open border. Okay, let me just talk to you about with this immigration and with this. I went to Juarez. I went to Laredo. I've been there. I crossed the borders. I saw for days how bad it is. It's open border. I went across into Mexico, paid 50 cents. That was it. No ID, no passport. Came back, no passport, nothing. I literally was looked at by the Border Patrol or the Homeland and basically looked upon and said, "Oh, please come." They have got such an infrastructure set up down there. It's almost like a third government. They have processing centers, and they're bringing in people right now by the millions a month. If anybody thinks it's less than a million a month, then they're misguided. Right now, we know of at least 24 million people that have come into the United States. They've come in, they've established residency here, they've gotten their green card, they're going to be able to vote, they got a driver's license, and they're going to vote. Let me give you some estimates here about what the infrastructure bill and the deficit and the inflation and all of the, well, actually, there's another piece of legislation they did that was actually even worse, but let me kind of just roundabout here. If you take the 23 to 24 million people that have come across the border, they're registered to vote. Now, the question is, will they all vote? They're going to try to bus them to the places at which and then what will happen is they'll be able to go ahead and they'll say, okay, we're now busing in people and to the 20 or 24 million. And then number two, which is interesting, they're looking at how many of the votes they've been able to get registered in both the low impoverished and the places of which the infrastructure and the deficit reduction bill was able to pay these people to vote. So we're looking at close to 40 million new voters. On top of that, you've got the policy. So they're not doing this in such a way that would give them any means to be nervous. They're doing this in such a way that is clearly going to give them the edge. And this could put them into the 4 to 5 category ahead polls. Because right now, what we're seeing is absolutely positively those polls numbers are not wrong if you count the cheating.
So I always argue that the polls are way off. But if you are going to consider the quote unquote cheating, people that are not American citizens, well, then it's very different, right? I mean, at the same time, the vast majority of these people, although going throughout the country, are going to places like Chicago, are going to places like NYC, are going to places in California. But then you do have Texas, and you do have Arizona, and those states you could argue have been quote unquote purple for some time. And, although Texas is red, they've tried to make it more purple. Certainly, Austin is a very liberal area. Houston moving in that direction. San Antonio not that far off. Do you think through this illegal immigration that they could actually flip a state like Texas from red to blue in this 2024 election?
No question. See, here's what the polls don't take into consideration. Let's be straight up here, okay? We can't look. People lie. Math doesn't. Let's look at the numbers, because if you're signing up 30, 40 million, literally million new voters, those voters aren't going to the polls. You're not going to get them on the phone or get them to fill out a card and to ask they, hey, what do you think? How are you going to vote? Do you realize if you go online and look at the Social Security Administration's amount of people that have signed up for benefits in the last 3.5 years, it's over 30 million new people. None of these people are over the average age of 40 years old. Now, you can't tell me they're all on either government disability of some sort and they're getting some kind of a handout. These are people that have never voted. These are people that have more than likely been here for a number of years or have come over in the last 3.5 with open borders. They may have been here for 10 years, knowing that if they accept the understanding of voting Democrat, they'll get benefits that not only are continued, expanded, grossly increased to create an actual lifestyle. You're making $150,000 a year off benefits. That's a lifestyle. That's a career change. So think about this for a second. What people have always said, what scares me is not what I know. What makes me fearful going into battle is the unknown. Do I have enough men to make this battle worthwhile, or do I need to retreat and regroup? What I'm telling you, and I saw this today, the Democrats are outspending us, outraising us dramatically to the point where the Republican Party just today was announced they're in chaos because the amount of money the Democrats are raising are so disproportionately better than what we're raising. And I'll tell you why. This is a theory. Because their donors know that they've got the leading edge to win this election. And if they do, the donors will get paid back as they did when Biden won, or let's just say he got put into office. Whether you want to use the word winning, that's another story. But they know that Kamala is clearly in the lead because of one thing: the unknown number of voters. You're not going to get illegals that speak no English, majority are Spanish, to get on the phone and admit, oh, I'm an illegal, got my green card, got my driver's license, and I'm ready to roll. How are you going to get them on the phone? You can't. So by any measure, if you take the 22 to 24 million illegals, and that's at a minimum. The Border Patrol has a ratio right now, and I'm going to share it with you because it's not well known, but I'm going to tell you what it is. For every one that they catch, they process another 1.2 to 1.7 minimum. Some estimates are 2.2 more got in and stayed in. So if you look at the 11 million that they've admitted to, and you add just another 1.2 to it, that's over 22, 23 million. If you want to go 2.2, you're looking at 33 million. Okay? Now think about that for a second. 33 million voters that are added to the Democratic Party potential, not counting what I call the hood vote. That's where I grew up. I grew up in government housing. I know what that's like. And let me tell you something. You go down there with $5,000 a month, you'll own every single person down there if that is how they think. If they need the money and they're desperate and they're thinking with their wallet, I don't blame them. How could you? You're living in areas that you would love to get out of. But if it means taking some more money of that nature, so be it. That's how you buy votes.
Well, look, I grew up in that same way, and unfortunately, my mother's on the dole to this day, and it's a infectious, like, mental disease. People don't want to work. They don't
No.
want to, do 40 to 60 hours if everything's going to be taken for them. And then let's be honest, a lot of those people grift on the side and do side
Yeah.
gigs that never get reported while taking all of those quote unquote entitlements and benefits, etc. The system is exploited on all levels and needs massive reform. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk crypto and where it is in the current economy, especially with the ETFs, the rise of Bitcoin to over 70K, the fall a bit, where Ethereum is, where decentralization is, and much more. We'll be back with more Making Sense of the Madness after this.
I don't know about you, but I have to have that cup of coffee in the morning. And Kingdom Cup is mold-free, it is pesticide-free, and it is organic. It's got this flavor that is delicious. You don't even have to put cream or sweetener in it.
Why did we go with the bean form, the whole bean? Because ultimately the powder form is the one that gathers the most moisture. And that means the more potential mold development. This is actually organic, mold-free, certified. That's important because ultimately people drink coffee, it's cultural. And so we tried to meet the culture where it is and create a healthy alternative.
Make the healthy choice for you and your family. Try mold-free, pesticide-free, and it's organic. Delicious Kingdom Cup coffee. And it's available now at the Patriot TV store. Go to patriot.tv and click on store. You'll find Kingdom Cup coffee in the health and wellness section. Order Kingdom Cup coffee at the Patriot TV store now.
What if this happened to you when you're alone? Or what if it happened here? With MedGuard Alert, you're never alone. You can connect with medical professionals anywhere, anytime. And now MedGuard is introducing our exclusive new Care Watch. If you need help quickly, use it from anywhere to contact medical professionals. No cell phone required. The Care Watch is not only a life-saving medical alert device, it's a revolutionary health monitoring system that checks your blood pressure, heart rate, oxygen saturation, and much more. And here's the best part. If you have Medicaid, you may qualify to get your Care Watch for free. The Care Watch is only available through MedGuard Alert. Call us right now. We have monitoring programs starting as low as $1 a day. The call is free, activation is free, shipping is free, and no contract is required. Remember, with Medicaid, you may qualify to get your Care Watch for free. Don't wait. Call us to get your Care Watch right now. Operators are standing by.
And we are back. We are with Christian Briggs. Christian, when we look at the crypto market, okay, it's been around for a very, very long time. Obviously, now Bitcoin has been legitimized through ETFs. You've got BlackRock, you've got Vanguard heavily invested in Bitcoin at this point. But I've certainly seen a shift, right? So I often talk about in 2020, when the COVID 1984 nightmare started to kick off in the United States and we started getting lockdowns mid-March, we literally had the market stop several times. And as that stopped and they did whatever they did to save it, saw crypto kind of shoot through the roof. This was the rise of Bitcoin up to that 60,000+ mark. And there were plenty of altcoins at that time that were doing 10, 100, sometimes 1,000x, right? Ethereum exploded during that time period. Now, in stark contrast, when we had that global collapse several weeks ago, based in the Japanese yen, you had Bitcoin, which had hit a high of around 73, I think was sitting somewhere in the high 60s, 68, 69. You have this happen. It dumped all the way down to under $50,000. It went in the opposite direction of where it did the last time around. Now, it has recovered somewhat, but I would also argue that the altcoin market has remained extremely stagnant. The only real games in town that seem to have been legitimized are Ethereum and, of course, Bitcoin. Now, a lot runs on the Ethereum network. There's plenty of tokens out there. There's the promise of smart contracts, etc. What is your feeling on crypto, the big boys, the altcoins, etc., in this market, and where can we expect it to go?
Okay, so let's just talk about what crypto is in general. It's a decentralized system that allows inter-domestic or continental, I call it the trans of all transaction. It's anonymous. It has anonymity. It can go anywhere at any time to anybody. It is truly a transparent, but yet at the same time a very private network to buy and sell goods. Even though it's an algorithm based on mathematical probabilities, obviously it has one core code, and then from there it can go and transfer all around the world. The good and the bad is this. We have a great system already for monetary policy, whether it's a SWIFT or mBridge. We have great policy already that works very efficiently. The only reason why there's any war on crypto is because they want to centralize. There's an old term, when you centralize power, you centralize the ability to surveil or to control and certainly to contain anything within that centralized environment, centralizing power for centralizing governments. The thing that Bitcoin, and I'll just say crypto in general, which is a decentralized system, okay, it's a distributed ledger on a decentralized platform. The problem that you have is the governments won't allow that much longer. That's why they've been going after it. See, Bitcoin should be $500,000 to $1 million. But because of the SEC, DOJ, and other governments around the world, some have accepted it as a means until the central bank digital currency is fully issued, which is a centralized system, like I said earlier, which is what they are going to mandate. They're never going to allow you and I to sit there and have freedom of capital to be flowing from A to B to C to D to E. They're not going to allow it. They can't tax it, monitor it. They can't control it. Control is the big part. So crypto has a massive place within society. The question is, I don't know which society or culture, or in this case, jurisdiction, that's going to actually be able to freely move around, because so many governments are determined now that CBDCs are the future. I'm here actually in Barbados right now, we're opening up one of the world's largest banks called the Gold Standard International Bank. It's a gold-backed bank. What we're finding out is the same thing that I would tell anybody, and that is there are friendly jurisdictions that are going to promote and allow you. Russia has become a big proponent of Bitcoin or any crypto. They love it. They're going to support it. The U.S. under the current administration hates it. However, it has to stay. Whether you like it or not, you have to advocate for it, because if you don't, and we get rid of decentralized systems, which is the bedrock of the current monetary policies around the world, you go to centralized. Once the centralized system hits, you have to have an encryption key to be able to move your money around. Those are what they call government subsidized. I call them subsidized because they put the money in it, they take from you, so you subsidize the way in which the government runs. They'll just take it from you. So if you're not paying your taxes, or you're behind on rent or mortgage or car, they'll just take it from you. You don't spend all your money in a month to keep the economy going, take it. You spend on the wrong stuff, they take it. So we have to have crypto. Crypto is an essential part of an open, free society. And if any talk, I mean anybody, said it's wrong to have crypto, then run, because that is a Marxist communist statement. That's a control statement. It's much like what Ronald Reagan once said. As soon as the government tells you they're here to help, run. They're never here to help, they're here to take. So your point is very well made, that crypto has to be almost the law of the land. It has to be around. And I think Ethereum is one of the best ones out there because it's a true software company. Nothing wrong with Bitcoin. It's a unit of payment. So it doesn't really have software technology or revenues that would otherwise be established to create a framework of valuation. However, it's because it's the leading understanding of a crypto or a digital currency unit. Ethereum, great company. And there's great other blockchain-based companies. You mentioned smart contracts. Let's talk about that. If we fall to a centralized ledger, okay, a centralized distributed ledger, what's going to happen is smart contracts are basically the current paper ownership. So you have a car title, a deed, a mortgage, anything that has a contractual understanding in paper form, and you digitize that on the blockchain. If it's on a decentralized system, you hold the encryption key to transfer that piece of paper, or basically that asset, which is the understanding of ownership. If we centralize the ledger, because we're decentralizing monetary to centralized, in other words, we're getting rid of decentral, smart contracts on a centralized ledger then means that ownership transfers to the government in theory, because unless they approve the transaction of selling it and purchasing it, you are now at the limits of what the government allows you to do. So your free will to just sell it or to buy something at any time you want would be limited. How do they do this? They do this in China already. The digital yuan, the digital smart contract, all work on one platform, a centralized platform. The CCP has the ultimate authority over the provinces. There's 46 in China. Each province has regulations from the federal level of the CCP. Then on top of that, they have their own local jurisdiction limits. So if you're caught walking across the street in an area that you're not, instantly you're deducted a certain amount of money in your wallet. That's the digital yuan, central bank digital currency of China. Second thing, which is really bad, ownership in something. You may have that taken away from you. You may have higher taxes. You may actually have to pay additional fees for the ownership of the asset. Worst case is they don't like the way your lifestyle is. Your carbon footprint is too much. So what do? Hey, we'll just tax you to death. Now you lose your ownership of your asset. They don't want you transferred. You no longer own this thing. In fact, you become a ward of the state. Now you're being pushed back into a dependency lifestyle. Number one goal of a communist party, I don't care what you frame them, call them, whatever label you want to put on them, the number one goal of communism is to create a state of dependency. You may be able to go to work, but your work is really a labor camp, whether you disguise it as a factory worker or a salesman. You have to understand that the way of which the communists work is one way. Dependency creates lifelong followers. They will do whatever they are told to do, because if not, we take away their absolute understanding of how they're going to live. That's your problem. So crypto has to stay. Ethereum, great company like many others. Bitcoin, we have to advocate for that every single day.
So my main issue with something like Bitcoin is once a government either makes it illegal or wants your Bitcoin, they're going to get it. Now I know private keys and all these other things, but I'll give you an example. It's probably about 6 months ago. Out in Germany, you had two individuals that were apparently running some piracy site a decade plus ago. They took that payment, they didn't even take it in Bitcoin, invested in Bitcoin. Okay. They had over $2 billion in Bitcoin. Now, when that moved, a bunch of people thought Satoshi had shown his face and blah, blah, blah. Bunch of Johnny nonsense, not real. What actually happened is they got these guys in a room, and one way or another, they got their keys. Now, these guys can't use the $2+ billion they had to defend themselves in what I would assume is going to be a very rigged court system. This sets an awful precedent. This is a westernized nation, and quite frankly, I see it becoming the rule, not the exception, when they want to stop somebody, whether it be a political dissident, a criminal, some kind of someone who can challenge the narrative successfully. They'll just take your stuff, and if they don't take your stuff, they'll just put you in a room till you give your stuff up. Am I crazy for thinking that?
No. Crazy would be more, I would say you're astute to think that. And I'm not a lover of Bitcoin, but I'm a lover of decentralized systems. I'm a lover of, and we have to have things of which that give us the open borders policy for at least payment processing. Maybe not for immigration, but for certainly payment processing. If you go back about 6 years ago and do some homework on Saudi Arabia, when they were in a huge deficit, it was actually maybe 4 to 6 years ago. It started about six and kind of really ramped up about 4 years ago. What happened was they got into a massive debt. Oil had plummeted. Certainly when Trump brought it down, then it went to zero, went to actually negative, which was so funny. And they had no choice but to do one thing. They rounded up the richest Saudis, about 200 of them, members of the royal family, distant relatives, but nevertheless relatives, blood relatives. So the Crown Prince, MSB, as he's normally pretty much titled, said, I need $200 billion. I need it overnight. So what did they do? They rounded up everybody, stopped the flow of their cash, froze their assets, because Saudi Arabia has a lot of different digital systems in place. And Bitcoin was already flowing through Saudi Arabia, but they had the controls even in a decentralized crypto system. And when they did that, they were able to shake down about $200 billion from princes and princesses and anybody else that was, hugely successful in Saudi Arabia. That is exactly what happens in China every day. And remember what Waltz, the vice president, said recently, how he praised the economy, society, culture, but more importantly, the way the government runs China. If that is the case, if there's any inclination that he thinks that some part or all the parts of China are running in such a way, and he's made it clear, that is a model. That's a model for all of us to be established by. Klaus Schwab, World Economic Forum, said hundreds of times, Bill Gates. Even some members of the UK Parliament have said, and as well as in Netherlands and Brussels and places in the European Union have said, China is a model for the way society should be run. Trudeau, Canada, a model. He loves China. Dictatorship is actually a good thing, they've all agreed, when applied as a whole to keep society in check. Now, you define in check. Is that in our house, in our jobs, in our cars, or in a park? It's all of the above. Not to limit access to wealth is the way you grab power. So if they're not going to let us have the money, then great, you limit us to that money, because otherwise we can't go nowhere if we have money. Hitler said three things are very important. He said the three things that he fears, and this is when he took power. When Hindenburg died, he became Chancellor of Germany in the mid-30s. He said the three things that I fear the most is a man with a gun, a man with faith, and a man that owns gold, because I can't break the man, because those are the three things that enable him to maintain his own identity and his own freedom. So when you start to look at recently in the last 3 years, the IRS requires now precious metals, certain types of precious metals, you got to report that to the IRS on every purchase and sale. Look at the guns. She's talking about writing executive orders to take the guns away. Certainly the ARs, anything that's larger than pretty much a water pistol. And then you start looking at the healthcare, and you start looking at banks. All of this stuff they want to nationalize, control, or just downright take away. There is no Democrat anymore, at least in the public eye, that sides with the old Bill Clinton days, going all the way back to the JFK days. This is a Marxist communist takeover of the United States. The question is, will she win? And if so, what will she do in those first 100 days? Well, we know the end game, but we need to realize that it's important today to go up and to push back on these policies. Nobody wins. And here, I'll leave it kind of this last statement here about this part you bring up. It's hard for me to understand why somebody worth 200 billion or 150 billion would want these policies, but yet you can. There's always meaning behind somebody who wants to rob a bank. I just don't understand it. To me, it's a kind of a career limitation, certainly not longevity. But if I owned a company that was monopolizing a category, 80, 90, 95%, and the Democrats have said, you keep us in power, we will keep you a monopoly. That is exactly what happened in all communist takeovers or socialist governments. Look at the companies that are the biggest players in their category, their business segment. The monopolies are very clear. Google for search, Amazon for online retailing, Microsoft for operating systems, and you've got Facebook for social media and connections. Think about this stuff. Think about these companies, and they all back the Democratic Party because they're now communist in nature.
Christian, we got to take one last break. I want to hit on that topic when we come back. I also want to talk gold. We're going to have about 6 minutes left in the broadcast. He's the CEO of Hard Asset Management, Inc., and we'll be back with the final segment after this.
Attention patriotic businesses. Do you want to see your sales skyrocket by selling your products or services to like-minded patriots? Well, if you're an advertiser who embodies the timeless principles of freedom, liberty, and patriotism, look no further than Patriot TV. Our viewers are responsive, economically active patriots who are committed to supporting businesses like yours that align with their values. For more information on advertising on America's new network of proud American businesses, email us at advertise@patriot.tv.
Former National Security Advisor, Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, pleaded guilty today to lying to the FBI.
He was one of the most respected generals in the military.
Every American needs this historical DVD keepsake. Flynn delivered the truth, whatever the cost. Hand signed by General Michael Flynn. Order now at the Patriot TV store. Use promo code PTV at checkout to get special savings. The Patriot TV store, a secure, hassle-free shopping experience.
Throughout history, the spirit of patriotism has prevailed. The battles may have changed, but the values remain the same. Today, in 2024, we find ourselves at a pivotal moment where the call for unity, freedom, and a better future echoes louder than ever. For more than 10 years, Patriot Mobile has been committed to supporting the values that make our nation great. With affordable plans and reliable nationwide coverage, Patriot Mobile is not just a wireless service. It's a call to action for those who believe in the American dream. Because this year is not just any year, it's the most important year since our nation's founding. Choose a wireless carrier that shares your values. Choose Patriot Mobile.
And we are back with Christian Briggs. And look, you just talked about monopolies. I would call them technopolies, and I would take it even further. They all have government contracts. Okay. You look at something like Google, it is not, oh, great. It's traded on the stock market. It has government contracts in the Defense Department programming the drones. It has government contracts with NASA in quantum computing and artificial intelligence. That's not a private company in my eyes. You mentioned Amazon. That was a company that wasn't making money for almost 2 decades. Okay. Again, this isn't real capitalism. Meanwhile, they don't pay any taxes. We've seen what the government does with companies that challenge the prowess of social media outlets that they control. Look at Parler. They went right in there, and Apple, Android took them off the market. You mentioned Microsoft. To do with operating systems, I would also argue Google is right there. In fact, their operating system is on more devices globally, whether it be this or now the Chromebooks that are in every single classroom than anything in the world. So how do you change that system? Because even Donnie T during Operation Warp Speed talked Google up. A lot of people forget that. They want to talk about Biden administration, censorship, and narratives. He was just as on board in the very beginning with all this as well. So what is the solution? We've only got about 5 minutes left in the broadcast. And then you mentioned hard assets. Gold and silver having a renaissance moment, I would argue, because fiat currency ain't doing that great and more people are investing. Where are we with that as well in these last 5 minutes?
Okay, so let's go back to some of the I'm going to call it taxes, like you were talking about, and the various policies and things like that. The reason why gold, and I'm going to circle back on this. The reason why gold has gone up so much back in 2012 when China started dumping our treasuries, our debt, they knew gold was going to be the place to put the money because of the debt loads of not just the U.S. but the rest of the world. So again, fast forward. If you look at where you want to start to really be cautious on, equities right now are about to take a major hit. There'll be some bad news coming out shortly. They've done everything they can to support the equities market. Bonds are rallying because there's an expected interest rate cut, even though we know the underlying economy is very, very bad. And inflation could easily whack right back up. It could go just overnight if she becomes president because of her policies. Gold is not a get-rich-quick product. But long-term, since 1974, again, statistics are what you want, stats. It's been averaging 19% when averaged every 5 to 10 years. So it is a store of wealth. It can create wealth that goes above and beyond the cost of living or the decreasing dollar buying power, or at least the value of the dollar, both on a domestic or global basis. So I encourage people is this: 20% of your money needs to go into precious metals. There are certain types of gold bullion products that are exempt from the IRS's required reporting of purchases and sales, so we can legally get around that. And then the last part is, as you start to see Kamala in the numbers, I want this to be an emphasis. This is very important. As you want to look through wealth protection and what I've always said, I talk to a lot of billionaires every single day. What would you do different today about your money if you knew Kamala Harris was going to for sure win the election? And every single one that I've asked that to over the last, say, 3-4 weeks has said, gee, that's a tough question. I hadn't thought that. I'm still hoping Trump wins. Do not invest in hope. Hope is an intrinsic thing that we have where we want an outcome to be favorable to what our own desires are. But sometimes it doesn't work that way. And if it doesn't, okay, kind of like longevity and health, why we have health insurance, car insurance, you need wealth insurance. I'm not here to sell you a product. I'm here to tell you that the product is critical at this point. Look at the debt. Look at the politics. Look at the corruption. Remember this. Barack Obama said not that long ago, I will not allow Donald Trump to take the White House back. I will do everything in my power. I will do things that of which have never been done before. And I think that this time he means it. 2020, he did do things that were done. This time, look what's happening. This man who has sacrificed his life for this country and his family will be sentenced on September 18th. This cat could go to jail for 12 months at Rikers Island.
12 months.
You
He
do
could
not
do
get a
more
cell
than that.
phone.
Let's be real, man.
Oh,
Again, he could do way
absolutely.
more than
The-
that. And they could send him right
yeah,
then. And a lot of people think that
I
that's
know.
imagination land or there's no deal. They tried to shoot the guy in the head.
No, I know. I know. And here's what's interesting. I'm currently today with the chairman of the Homeland Security Committee of the United House of Representatives with me. He's with me now as we speak. And he's the one leading the investigation on the attempted assassination of the president. And he said point blank, the Democrats clearly will do whatever it takes to be able to win an election. Nobody knows exactly who is behind the attempt at this point that far goes beyond just the shooter. And maybe one day we'll know. Same thing we kind of figured out from JFK. But as a minimum sentencing guidelines, Bragg is asking for a minimum of 2 years at Rikers. The judge is rumored to be inclined to give 12 months. And you're right, it could be 104 years based on 34 felony counts if they were concurrent. But even 12 months, if he's taken out of the political arena with no access to internet or phone, do the math. He can't attend places of which to keep it going. I do believe he'll win this election.
We
if-
have run out of time, my
yeah.
friend. We can do a whole hour on Trump, I'm sure. Christian Briggs, Hard Asset Management Inc. is where you're going to find him. Folks, you know the drill. It's not about left or right to this guy. It is always about right and wrong. The truth lives here at Patriot.tv. Thanks for joining me 5 days a week. I love you, and we'll see you on the flip side.